I'm Tanya Hichert, a Futures and Foresight practitioner and a fellow at CST at University of Stellenbosch. This short video deals with a method or tool, we use the term interchangeably, um, covered in chapter 10 of the SES handbook, which is all about futures analysis. So here we take a little closer look at futures wheels, a very handy tool. It's intuitive, it's easy to use, and as soon as you've seen an example or been part of a workshop where this is used, I'm sure you'll feel confident about using it yourself. A definition, this is in the handbook chapter, a group brainstorming method that explores and maps multiple levels of consequences of trends, events, emerging issues, and or future possible decisions. The example I'll show you in just a second is all about imagining a future disaster and then looking at the unfolding impacts and consequences of that event having happened. So a clear example of using the future to take better decisions and make better choices today. It's a graphic visualization of direct and indirect, positive and negative future consequences of a particular change or development. So here's the example. As you, this is online work, by the way. So this is a online platform using this tool. I'll show what the tool looks like in real life example in the slide after this. Here we are imagining that a massive oil spill has happened in the Okavango Delta in Botswana. And participants are then asked to imagine, well, what are the impact, the consequences of that event having taken place? And they're asked to use STEEP V acronym, which covers domains. So STEEP V covers social domain, technological, environmental, economic, political, and often we add V as well, values. So this event has happened. What are the impacts? And here you can see the sort of the first order impacts and consequences of this event having taken place. The yellow dots, bubbles, this is all participatory, by the way, so people populate this while engaging in conversation around this event. Yellow is the second wave of consequences and impacts. And then the red dots, sort of the consequences of the consequences, the impacts of the impacts, if that makes change. Makes sense. So this will obviously have a very negative impact on tourism, but negative impact on tourism is going to imply loss of jobs, it's going to imply increased poverty. So you can kind of see this logic of what if, what if, what if. As I mentioned, easy to use, it's intuitive. Here's a much simpler, earlier stage example. Again, these are sort of senior decision makers looking at AMR, antimicrobial resistance, within a scenario of a preferred future. So it's a preferred future that they're working with, but then we're saying, well, what happens if something happens in the preferred future, which is a shock or a predictable surprise? Antimicrobial resistance is one of those predictable surprises, much like a pandemic. And here you can see the sort of hexagon stickies that we use to describe this. This is an example of future wheels that are clustered together. And this is very specifically used in the Manoa method of scenario planning, so developing scenarios. So what we do here is we imagine a seed, a niche or an experiment or something that is not widely distributed, but indicates a different future, often a preferred future. And we state it as a mature condition because remember, you start off with either an imagined thing or an event or a trend. And so these are seeds that are imagined as a mature condition. The case study is written up in chapter 10. It's really, really interesting. And unpacking the future wheel, as you can see, in its concentric waves of change, and then seeing how these waves of change, the change of different seeds, impact one another, and how that sort of then inductively gives rise to a story of a completely different future. Interesting work, really enjoyable work, and very well worth experimenting with and having a go at. Thank you.